The first whisper of dawn touches the cobblestones of Prague's ancient square, painting them in shades of pearl and amber. High above the sleeping city, Master Wilhelm awakens not to the crow of a rooster, but to something far more subtle, the gentle shift in the tower's heartbeat that signals the approaching hour. His weathered hands, still warm from sleep, reach instinctively for the heavy woolen cloak hanging beside his narrow cot. For 37 years, Wilhelm has called this clock tower home, and for 37 years, he has begun each day with the same sacred ritual. His bare feet find the familiar grooves worn smooth in the stone floor, each step a meditation in itself. The tower breathes around him, ancient timbers settling, brass mechanisms humming their mechanical lullabies, the great pendulum marking its eternal rhythm somewhere in the shadows below. The spiral staircase curves upward through layers of time itself. Wilhelm's lantern casts dancing shadows on walls that have witnessed centuries pass like pages turning in an endless book. Each step carries him deeper into his communion with time, away from the world of merchants and bakers beginning to stir in the streets below, and into the realm where minutes and hours are born. His first stop is always the oil chamber, a small alcove carved into the tower's heart. Here, in wooden bottles worn smooth by countless touches, rests the precious mixture of whale oil and rosemary that keeps the great gears singing their silent songs. Wilhelm's movements are deliberate, almost ceremonial, as he fills his brass oiling can. The scent of rosemary mingles with the deeper fragrances of old wood and metal, creating a perfume unique to this sacred space. The great clockwork spreads before him like a mechanical garden, brass flowers blooming in perfect geometric precision, iron vines twisting in calculated spirals, copper leaves catching the lamplight as they turn in their endless dance. Wilhelm tends each gear with the devotion of a gardener, his oiled cloth caressing every surface, his practiced eye noting the health of each component. The mechanism purrs under his touch, grateful for this daily blessing. From his small window, the city of Prague unfolds like a tapestry woven from morning mist and golden stone. Red-tiled roofs cascade down toward the Vltava River, which flows like liquid silver in the early light. Wisps of smoke begin to rise from chimneys as housewives kindle their fires, and the first market vendors venture into the square, their wooden carts creaking pleasant melodies against the stones. Wilhelm turns to the celestial dial, that masterpiece of astronomical precision that maps the dance of stars and planets across heaven's dome. With instruments passed down from his predecessor, he checks the alignments. Venus bright in her morning glory, the moon settling into her daytime rest, the sun preparing to climb her golden ladder across the sky. Each celestial body must be accounted for, each movement predicted and celebrated by the tower's mechanical children. The weight chains hang like ancient bell pulls in the tower's throat, and Wilhelm tests each one with gentle pressure, feeling the tons of stone and metal that power this miracle of time. The counterweights descend slowly through their vertical journey, their descent marking days and weeks with the reliability of seasons themselves. Soon he will need to wind them again, a task that requires not just strength but perfect timing and infinite patience. As the appointed moment approaches, Wilhelm positions himself beside the dawn bell, not the great bronze giant that announces the hours to all of Prague, but her smaller sister, whose voice speaks only to those who truly listen. His hand rests on the rope, feeling the anticipation build like pressure before a summer storm. The escapement clicks its final preparation, the gear train aligns in perfect harmony, and time itself seems to pause, gathering its breath. The bell's voice blooms into the morning air like a flower opening to the sun, not the commanding bronze thunder of the hour bells, but something far more intimate. Her song drifts across the awakening city like a blessing, touching the ears of those who rise early, who understand that the most beautiful moments often whisper rather than shout. Wilhelm closes his eyes and lets the vibrations flow through his body, feeling himself become one with the tower's ancient song. Below in the square, a baker pauses in arranging his fresh loaves, tilting his head toward the tower with a small smile. A mother hanging washing on her line stops to listen, her infant quieting in her arms. A merchant leading his cart toward market nods respectfully toward the clock tower, acknowledging the gift of this gentle morning bell that marks not just time's passage, but time's grace. As the bell's voice fades into the growing symphony of the awakening city, Wilhelm begins his descent, already planning the day's careful maintenance, knowing that tomorrow's dawn will bring the same blessed ritual, the same communion between man and time, the same perfect moment when the tower's heart beats in harmony with the pulse of the world below. The first pale light of dawn has barely kissed the cobblestones when Wilhelm hears the familiar creaking of wooden cartwheels echoing up from the square below. He sets down his brass cleaning cloth and moves to the tall arched window, his weathered hands resting gently on the cool stone sill. The city is awakening like a great slumbering creature, stretching and stirring to life beneath the soft gray sky. Below, the merchants are beginning their ancient ritual. Old Henrik, the baker, wheels his cart into position near the fountain, steam rising from the warm loaves nestled in wicker baskets. The sweet aroma of fresh bread mingles with the crisp morning air, drifting upward on gentle currents until it reaches Wilhelm's tower sanctuary. He breathes deeply, savoring this simple pleasure that has greeted him every morning for 23 years. The fishmonger's wife appears next, her wooden buckets gleaming with silver catches from the Vieltava River. She arranges her wares with practiced efficiency, her movements as rhythmic and predictable as the clockwork mechanisms Wilhelm tends. There is something deeply comforting in this daily choreography, each merchant knowing precisely where to set up their stalls, each customer following well-worn paths through the growing maze of goods and voices. As the sun climbs higher, painting the red-tiled roofs with warm golden light, Wilhelm turns his attention to the clock's lunar mechanism. The delicate moon phase dial requires careful adjustment each morning, its tiny gears as intricate as spider silk. He removes a magnifying glass from his leather tool pouch and examines the silvery moon disk, ensuring it accurately reflects the celestial dance occurring far above the bustling square. The mechanical work soothes his mind. Each gear tooth must align perfectly with its neighbor, each tiny spring maintained at precise tension. As he makes minute adjustments with his smallest brass key, Wilhelm feels the same deep satisfaction a master weaver might experience threading silk through an intricate loom. The moon dial clicks softly into position, and he nods with quiet approval. A burst of childish laughter draws his gaze back to the window. A small crowd has gathered in the square, their faces turned upward toward the astronomical clock. Wilhelm checks his pocket timepiece and smiles. Nearly 9 o'clock. The children know, somehow they always know, when the mechanical figures are about to begin their hourly dance. He watches as the brass apostles emerge from their tiny doors, each figure moving with stately dignity along their prescribed path. The skeletal figure of death nods his hollow head, while the golden rooster spreads its wings and releases a melodious crow that echoes across the square. The children below clap their hands in delight, their joyful faces bright with wonder. Even the merchants pause in their haggling to glance upward at the celestial theater. Wilhelm feels a familiar warmth spreading through his chest as he observes this daily miracle. For all the years he has maintained these mechanisms, the magic never diminishes. Each moving figure tells a story older than memory. Each chime marks another moment in the endless flow of time that connects past to future, earth to heaven. A gentle breeze carries the voices of the market vendors up to his perch. The herb seller calls out the virtues of her dried lavender and chamomile. The wool merchant displays his finest fabrics, running his fingers along bolt after bolt of deep blue and forest green cloth. A young mother examines pottery while her infant sleeps peacefully against her shoulder, lulled by the rhythmic sounds of commerce and conversation. Wilhelm returns to his workbench and selects a soft chamois cloth. The brass faces of the clock require daily polishing to maintain their lustrous gleam. As he works, his movements fall into the meditative rhythm of long practice. Polish in small circles, breathe steadily, Feel the metal warm beneath his touch. The morning light streams through the tower windows, casting dancing patterns across his tools and creating a sanctuary of golden warmth high above the awakening city. The clock strikes 9 with deep, resonant tones that seem to emanate from the very stones of the tower. Wilhelm pauses in his polishing to count each chime, though he knows the sequence by heart. Each note hangs in the air for a moment before dissolving into the ambient symphony of the square below. Cartwheels, voices, footsteps, the gentle splash of the fountain. As the final chime fades away, Wilhelm sets down his cloth and allows himself a moment of perfect contentment. The merchants have found their rhythm, the children have been delighted, and the ancient clock continues its faithful vigil over the city. Time flows onward like the river beyond the walls, carrying each precious moment into the next. While he remains here in his tower, guardian of bells and keeper of hours, watching over the gentle dance of daily life. The morning mist clung to the cobblestones of Prague's old town square as young Thomas made his way toward the towering clock tower, his leather satchel bouncing gently against his hip. The great astronomical clock face gazed down at him like an ancient eye, its golden hands catching the first pale rays of sunlight that filtered through the autumn clouds. At 14, Thomas had never seen anything quite so magnificent, so mysterious, as the intricate dance of dials and figures that marked the passage of time for all the city to see. Wilhelm was waiting for him at the narrow wooden door that led into the clock tower's heart. The master clockmaker's weathered hands were already stained with the familiar patina of bronze and oil, his gray beard carefully trimmed, and his eyes twinkling with the quiet satisfaction of a man who had spent decades in communion with gears and springs. He smiled as Thomas approached, noting the boy's mixture of excitement and nervousness. "Come then, lad," Wilhelm said softly, his voice carrying the gentle authority of years. "Let us see what wonders await us today." The spiral stone steps wound upward into shadows, each footfall echoing softly in the narrow space. Thomas followed Wilhelm's steady pace, his fingers trailing along the cool stone wall as they climbed. The air grew warmer as they ascended, filled with the subtle sense of metal polish and well-oiled wood, and somewhere above them, the gentle mechanical whisper of the great clock's heartbeat. When they finally emerged into the clockwork chamber, Thomas drew in a sharp breath of wonder. Golden morning light streamed through tall, narrow windows, illuminating a world of bronze wheels and silver gears, all moving in perfect, mesmerizing harmony. The largest gear, nearly as tall as Wilhelm himself, turned with majestic slowness, its teeth meshing with smaller companions in an endless, graceful conversation of metal and motion. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Wilhelm murmured, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched Thomas's wide-eyed exploration. "Each wheel has its purpose, each spring its perfect tension. Together, they create something far greater than the sum of their parts." Thomas nodded mutely, following Wilhelm deeper into the mechanical maze. Here was a constellation of brass, a universe in miniature where every component knew its place in the grand design. The steady tick-tick-tick of the escapement provided a soothing rhythm, like a great stone heart beating in the tower's chest. Wilhelm paused beside a series of heavy iron weights suspended on thick hemp ropes. "These," he explained, his voice taking on the patient cadence of a teacher, "are what give our clock its life. As they descend, they release their stored energy slowly, feeding power to every wheel, every dial, every moving figure you see dancing on the clock face below." Together, they began the morning ritual of winding. Thomas watched as Wilhelm demonstrated the proper way to grasp the heavy rope, how to pull with steady, measured strength, raising the great weights inch by careful inch. The metal cables sang softly as they moved through their pulleys, and Thomas could feel the power flowing through the system like blood through veins. The astronomical dial, Wilhelm continued, gesturing toward a complex arrangement of gears that seemed to mirror the very heavens, follows the movement of sun and moon, the dance of the zodiac across our mortal sky. When you understand the clockwork, young Thomas, you begin to understand time itself not as our enemy, racing away from us, but as our oldest friend, marking the rhythm by which all life moves. As Thomas took his turn with the winding rope, feeling the satisfying weight and resistance, Wilhelm watched with the quiet pride of a craftsman seeing his knowledge pass to eager hands. The boy's movements were careful, reverent even, as if he sensed the profound responsibility contained in these simple motions. Each dawn, Wilhelm said, his voice soft with memory, I have stood in this chamber for 37 years, listening to the clock's steady voice. In summer heat and winter's bite, through feast days and times of sorrow, the clock has marked our hours with perfect faithfulness. And now you will learn to be its guardian too. The weights settled into their positions with gentle finality, and the great clock seemed to sigh with satisfaction, its mechanisms settling into another day's patient work. Thomas stood beside his master in the golden morning light, surrounded by the quiet symphony of bronze and steel, feeling for the first time the deep contentment that comes from work that matters, from becoming part of something ancient and enduring. Outside, the bells of Prague began their morning chorus, and the Clocktower's own voice joined the harmony, marking another hour in the endless, beautiful procession of time. The cathedral bells of Prague have fallen silent, their morning songs complete, leaving only the gentle whisper of wind through the Clocktower's stone arches. Wilhelm climbs the familiar spiral staircase, his weathered hands trailing along the cool limestone walls, each step bringing him closer to his sacred duty at the day's most crucial moment. The noon hour approaches with the certainty of sunrise, and Wilhelm can feel it in his bones, that precise moment when the sun reaches its highest throne in the heavens. His feet know every worn groove in these ancient steps, carved smooth by countless clockmakers before him, their devotion echoing through decades of careful tending. At the top of the tower, sunlight floods through the tall windows, painting golden rectangles across the wooden floorboards. The great astronomical clock spreads before him like an illuminated manuscript, its brass gears catching fire in the brilliant light. Wilhelm pauses, breathing deeply of the warm air that carries the scent of blooming linden trees from the courtyard below. The clock face gleams, its intricate dial displaying the dance of celestial bodies with mathematical precision. The golden sun pointer creeps steadily upward along its circular path, approaching the very pinnacle of the dial where noon waits in perfect symmetry. Wilhelm watches with the patience of a gardener observing the slow unfurling of a flower, knowing that this moment requires both reverence and absolute accuracy. He moves to the shadow board, that masterpiece of medieval engineering where brass meets starlight in measured harmony. The gnomon, that triangular pointer reaching toward the heavens, casts its shadow across the numbered hours with the authority of ancient wisdom. Wilhelm's trained eye sees immediately what others might miss. The shadow falls just a whisper to the east of where it should rest at perfect noon. With movements as deliberate as a monk copying scripture, Wilhelm retrieves his brass adjustment tool from its velvet-lined case. The metal feels warm in his palm, heated by the climbing sun. He approaches the mechanism with the reverence of one who understands that he is merely a servant to something far grander than himself, the eternal conversation between earth and sky, between human ingenuity and celestial truth. The adjustment requires the gentlest touch. Wilhelm's fingers, skilled from years of this sacred craft, make the smallest possible correction to the gear assembly. The mechanical teeth engage with a soft clicking that sounds like distant prayer beads. He watches as the shadow shifts, degree by precious degree, until it rests exactly where mathematics and astronomy decree it must. The zodiac wheel continues its slow, eternal revolution, each constellation marked in gold leaf that catches the light like captured starfire. Gemini holds court in this season, the twins dancing their celestial ballet across the face of the clock, while the other signs wait patiently for their appointed moments throughout the year. Wilhelm steps back, his work complete, and allows himself this moment of quiet triumph. The shadow falls true. The astronomical dial shows the sun at its perfect zenith. The hour markers align with the precision that medieval craftsmen dreamed of achieving, their hopes realized in brass and bronze, and the patient devotion of those who came after. Through the tower windows, he can see the red-tiled roofs of Prague spreading like a tapestry toward the distant hills. Smoke rises from countless chimneys in gentle columns, carrying the scent of bread baking and hearth fires burning. The Vltava River winds through the city like a silver ribbon, reflecting the noon sun in countless dancing diamonds. From this height, Wilhelm can see merchants setting up their afternoon stalls in the old town square, their colorful awnings creating a patchwork of shadow and light. Children play between the cobblestones, while their mothers hang washing on wooden lines that stretch between the ancient buildings. Life continues its gentle rhythm far below, marked and measured by the faithful ticking of his clock tower. The astronomical clock chimes the noon hour with deep, resonant notes that roll across the city like liquid bronze. Each strike reverberates through Wilhelm's chest, a physical reminder of time's passage and the honor of being its earthbound guardian. The sound fades slowly, absorbed by stone walls and carried away on warm currents of summer air. Wilhelm places his hand gently on the clock's brass housing, feeling the subtle vibration of its mechanisms, hundreds of gears and wheels and springs working in perfect harmony. In this moment, craftsman and creation are one, part of the same eternal dance that connects earth to heaven, present to past, and the measured heartbeat of human time to the vast, patient turning of the stars above Prague's dreaming spires. High above the cobblestone streets of Prague, the autumn morning light filters through the narrow windows of the clock tower, casting golden patterns across the worn stone floor. Wilhelm moves with practiced care around the great astronomical clock, his weathered hands holding a soft cloth dampened with oil. Today marks a special celebration, and every bronze figure must gleam like new copper in the sunlight. Thomas, he calls softly to his young apprentice, who kneels beside the intricate mechanism. Polish the apostle of St. Peter once more. The goldsmith's wedding deserves our finest work. Thomas nods, his gentle movements reflecting the reverence he has learned in these months high above the city. The 12 bronze apostles stand ready in their ancient dance, each figure carved with loving detail by craftsmen long past. As Thomas works, the bronze seems to warm beneath his touch, as if awakening for the celebration to come. Below them, Prague stirs with unusual activity. From their towering perch, Wilhelm and Thomas can see the cathedral square filling with wedding guests, their finest clothes creating patches of deep blue, rich burgundy, and forest green against the pale stone. The goldsmith, renowned throughout the city for his delicate work with precious metals, has chosen this blessed day for his union. Wilhelm climbs the narrow wooden ladder to check the great bell that will announce the ceremony. His fingers trace the smooth bronze surface, feeling for any imperfection. This bell has rung for countless weddings over the centuries, its voice carrying joy across the red-tiled roofs of the city. Today, it will sing once more for love. Master Wilhelm, Thomas whispers, pointing toward the cathedral doors. Look how the morning light catches the bride's gown. Far below, a procession emerges from the narrow streets leading to the square. The bride moves slowly, gracefully, her white silk gown flowing like water over the ancient cobblestones. Behind her, musicians play gentle melodies on wooden flutes and small drums, their music drifting up to the clock tower on the cool autumn breeze. The goldsmith waits at the cathedral entrance, his hands clasped behind his back. Even from this great height, Wilhelm can see the man's nervous joy, the way he shifts his weight from foot to foot. These moments before a wedding carry such tender anticipation, like the pause between the clock's tick and its talk. Wilhelm moves to the great wheel that controls the apostles' procession. In just minutes, the clock will mark the hour, and the 12 figures will begin their ancient march. Each apostle will bow slightly as they pass the small windows, blessing the ceremony below with their presence. The cathedral bells begin to ring, their bronze voices joining in harmony. First the deep bass notes, then the lighter tenor bells, creating a cascade of sound that rolls across the city like gentle thunder. Wilhelm listens carefully, knowing that soon his own bells must join this celestial choir. Thomas has finished polishing the last apostle, and now he stands beside the master clock keeper, both watching the scene unfold below. The wedding party has entered the cathedral, but the celebration spills out into the square, where children chase pigeons and elderly craftsmen share wine from wooden cups. As the great clock's hands approach the hour, Wilhelm places his weathered hand on the lever that will set the apostles in motion. The mechanism turns with quiet precision, centuries of careful maintenance evident in its smooth operation. The first apostle begins to move, St. Peter emerging from his small doorway with dignified grace. One by one, the bronze figures complete their procession, each pause perfectly timed, each movement blessed by years of devoted care. The bells ring out across Prague, their voices carrying the Clocktower's blessing to the goldsmith and his bride, to their families, to all who hear the ancient music of time itself. Below, the wedding guests look up at the Clocktower, some pointing at the apostles, others simply listening to the bells with closed eyes. The goldsmith's bride emerges from the cathedral, now joined with her husband, and together they stand in the square as the clock marks this moment in their lives forever. Wilhelm and Thomas remain at their post as the celebration continues below. The bells gradually quiet, but their blessing lingers in the air like incense. Another wedding blessed by the ancient clock, another moment when time itself becomes a gift, measured not in minutes but in joy. The autumn sun climbs higher, warming the clock tower and the city below, as life continues its gentle rhythm in medieval Prague. The sun hangs low over the red-tiled rooftops of Prague, casting long golden shadows through the narrow cobblestone streets below. Brother Matthias adjusts his wool cloak against the evening chill as he climbs the winding stone steps of the clock tower, his leather satchel filled with carefully rolled parchments and brass instruments bouncing gently against his hip with each measured step. The scent of wood smoke and roasting meat drifts up from the chimneys scattered across the city, mixing with the crisp autumn air that filters through the tower's narrow windows. Each footfall echoes softly in the curved stone stairwell, a rhythmic accompaniment to the distant, ever-present ticking of the great clock mechanism somewhere above. Brother Matthias pauses on the third landing to catch his breath, placing one weathered hand against the cool stone wall. Through the arched window, he can see the spires of St. Vitus Cathedral silhouetted against the deepening purple sky, where the first stars are beginning to appear like tiny silver needles piercing the fabric of dusk. Wilhelm, he calls softly as he reaches the upper chamber, his voice carrying the gentle authority of years spent in scholarly pursuit. "I've brought the new calculations from the university." The clockmaker looks up from where he sits bent over a workbench, surrounded by brass gears and delicate springs that catch the warm glow of several oil lamps. His weathered face creases into a welcoming smile as he sets down his small hammer and wipes his hands on a worn leather apron. "Ah, Brother Matthias, perfect timing. The evening star has just appeared, and Mars is ascending beautifully tonight." Wilhelm gestures toward the open window where the great clock's astronomical dial catches the last rays of sunlight. "Your timing with the celestial movements grows more precise each month." The scholar chuckles quietly as he unpacks his satchel, carefully unrolling sheets of parchment covered in intricate diagrams and numerical calculations. The paper crackles softly in the still evening air, filling the space between the gentle tick-tock of the clockwork and the distant murmur of the city settling into nighttime. Together, they spread the star charts across Wilhelm's workbench, anchoring the corners with small brass weights. The lamplight flickers gently across the careful inked lines that map the movement of planets and constellations, creating shadows that dance like living things across the detailed astronomical drawings. "See here," Brother Matthias points with a thin wooden stylus to a series of calculations along the margin. "The university has refined the measurements for Venus's orbital period. If we adjust the gear ratio in the astronomical ring by just 3 teeth, the predictions should align more perfectly with actual observations." Wilhelm nods thoughtfully, his experienced fingers tracing the mechanical drawings that accompany the mathematical formulas. Around them, the great clock continues its eternal dance, gears turning with the precision of decades of careful craftsmanship. The sound is hypnotic in its consistency, a metallic lullaby that has marked time for countless Prague evenings just like this one. The air grows cooler as full darkness settles over the city. Wilhelm lights another oil lamp, its warm golden glow joining the constellation of flames that illuminate their workspace. The additional light reveals more details in their charts, tiny stars marked with careful precision, planetary paths drawn in flowing curves that mirror the actual journeys of celestial bodies across the night sky. Your mechanical intuition continues to amaze me, Brother Matthias murmurs as he watches Wilhelm's sketch modifications to the gear train. To think that bronze and iron can be shaped to mirror the movements of heaven itself. Wilhelm's eyes twinkle in the lamplight as he adds another gear to his drawing. Time is the great teacher, brother. The same force that moves the stars moves these wheels. We simply listen carefully and try to match their rhythm. Outside the tower windows, Prague has transformed into a tapestry of scattered lights, candles flickering in windows, torches marking the paths of late travelers, the warm glow of taverns where evening meals are being shared. The air carries the comforting sounds of a medieval city at rest. The distant lowing of cattle being brought in from pasture, the soft murmur of evening prayers drifting from nearby churches, the gentle splash of water wheels turning along the Vltava River. As the evening deepens, Brother Matthias and Wilhelm work in comfortable silence, occasionally sharing quiet observations about planetary motions or gear ratios. Their collaboration represents the beautiful marriage of theoretical knowledge and practical craft, of university learning and workshop wisdom, all dedicated to the ancient human desire to measure and understand the passage of time. The clock tower continues its steady rhythm, marking each moment as Prague settles peacefully into another night, while above them, the stars wheel slowly across the darkening sky in their eternal, predictable dance. The cathedral bells have long since faded into the night air, their bronze voices settling into silence as midnight claims the ancient city of Prague. High above the cobblestone streets, in the tower that has watched over this place for countless seasons, Wilhelm begins his most sacred ritual, the Midnight Keeper's Watch. His footsteps are soft against the worn wooden stairs as he climbs, carrying his brass lantern before him like a gentle star. The flame dances behind its glass walls, casting warm golden circles that follow him upward through the tower's winding heart. Each step brings him closer to the great clock's chamber, where time itself rests in perfect mechanical slumber. The door opens with the faintest whisper of hinges, and Wilhelm enters the realm he knows better than his own heartbeat. Here, in this circular room of gears and brass, shadows dance in harmony with his lantern light. The great pendulum swings in its eternal rhythm, tick, 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 a sound so constant it has become the tower's breathing, the city's pulse made audible. Wilhelm sets his lantern upon the central workbench, its light spreading across the intricate machinery like honey poured over polished bronze. He moves with the careful grace of a man who has performed this dance 1,000 nights before, his hands knowing exactly where each lever rests, where each gear turns in its precise orbit around the clock's heart. The great wheel, tall as a man and carved with astronomical symbols, turns with the slowness of seasons. Wilhelm runs his fingers along its edge, feeling for any tremor in its movement, any whisper of wear that might disturb time's perfect flow. The bronze is cool beneath his touch, smooth from decades of faithful service. All is well, all moves as it should. He checks the smaller gears next, each one a universe of precision in miniature. The escape wheel ticks its tiny heartbeat, while the train of wheels carries power through the clock's body like blood through veins. Wilhelm's practiced eye catches the gleam of oil where it should be, notes the even wear on each tooth, the perfect spacing that keeps the hours marching forward in their orderly procession. Outside the tall windows, Prague sleeps beneath a blanket of stars. The Vltava River winds through the city like a ribbon of liquid moonlight, reflecting the ancient towers and bridges that have stood watch for centuries. In the castle, kings dream their royal dreams. In the merchant quarter, bakers rise early to begin their bread, but that hour is still distant. For now, all is peaceful silence and gentle rest. Wilhelm moves to the astronomical dial, where painted phases of the moon track their celestial dance. Tonight, the moon is nearly full, hanging like a pearl in the dark velvet sky beyond his window. Its light mingles with his lantern's glow, casting double shadows that seem to make the clock's figures come alive. Saints and apostles frozen in their eternal procession, waiting for dawn to wake them once again. The weight chains descend into darkness below, their brass links catching fragments of light as they disappear into the tower's depths. Wilhelm tests each chain's tension with a gentle touch, ensuring that gravity's pull will carry the clock through another day's faithful service. The weights are heavy with purpose, patient as sleeping giants in the tower's hollow heart. As he works, the city's night sounds drift up to him, the distant call of a night watchman making his rounds, the soft clop of a late horse's hooves on cobblestone, the whisper of wind through narrow medieval streets. These sounds weave themselves into the clock's steady ticking, creating a lullaby for the dreaming town below. Wilhelm checks the striking mechanism next, ensuring that when morning comes, the bells will ring clear and true. He touches each hammer, tests each connection with the gentle care of a father tucking children into bed. The bronze bells wait in their chamber above, ready to wake the city with their ancient song when the sun returns to paint the eastern sky with gold. The stars wheel overhead in their timeless patterns, the same constellations that watched over Prague when the first stones of this tower were laid. Wilhelm glances up through his window at their distant light, feeling himself part of something vast and eternal, a keeper of time in a world where moments flow like water, precious beyond measure. His rounds complete, Wilhelm settles into his chair beside the great pendulum. The clock ticks its steady rhythm, counting heartbeats into the peaceful night. Below, the city dreams on, trusting that time will keep its faithful watch, that morning will come in its proper season, that all will be well. In the gentle darkness of his tower, with starlight streaming through ancient windows and the clock's brass heart beating its eternal song, Wilhelm keeps his vigil. The midnight keeper's watch continues, as it has for countless nights before, as it will for countless nights to come. The afternoon sky above Prague began to darken as Wilhelm made his careful way up the narrow stone steps of the clock tower. Spring storms in the city were a sight to behold, but they required preparation. The delicate mechanisms of the great astronomical clock needed protection from the wind and driving rain that would soon sweep across the red-tiled rooftops below. Thomas was already in the clock chamber when Wilhelm arrived, his weathered hands moving with practiced efficiency as he checked the brass weights and pendulum housings. The old clockmaker had taught Wilhelm that storms were not enemies of timepieces, but tests of their resilience and the keeper's care. "The wind will come from the west," Thomas observed, his voice calm as distant thunder rumbled across the Vltava River. "We'll need to secure the outer dials and close the weather shutters on the mechanism housing." Wilhelm nodded, feeling the familiar sense of purpose that came with protecting their ancient charge. Together, they began the ritual of storm preparation that Clocktower guardians had performed for generations. Wilhelm carefully closed the wooden shutters that protected the intricate gears from moisture, while Thomas checked that the great bells above were properly secured in their housing. The first drops of rain began to patter against the tower's stone walls as they worked. Through the narrow windows, Wilhelm could see the city spreading out below them, the Gothic spires of churches, the merchant houses with their steep roofs, and the castle on the hill, all preparing for the storm's embrace. Shopkeepers were pulling their wares under covered arcades, and citizens hurried along the cobblestone streets with cloaks pulled tight against the gathering wind. "Listen," Thomas said softly, pausing in his work. The storm was announcing itself with a gentle symphony, the whisper of wind through the tower's stone arches, the soft drumming of rain against the shutters, and the distant roll of thunder that seemed to echo the rhythm of their great clock's heartbeat. Wilhelm found himself mesmerized by the storm's approach. From their high vantage point, they could watch the rain sweep across the city in silver curtains, transforming the familiar streets into something magical and mysterious. The red clay roof tiles gleamed like jewels in the strange, greenish light that preceded the storm's full arrival. Inside the clock chamber, the massive pendulum continued its eternal swing, unperturbed by the drama unfolding outside. The steady tick-tock provided a counterpoint to the storm's irregular percussion, a reminder that time moved forward regardless of weather's moods. Wilhelm checked the smaller mechanisms, the planetary dials that tracked the movement of sun and moon, the calendar wheels that marked the passing seasons, all continuing their ancient dance. The storm reached its peak just as the afternoon bells were due to chime. Wilhelm and Thomas stood together in the protective embrace of the stone chamber, listening as the thunder seemed to answer the deep bronze voices of their bells. 4 o'clock rang out across Prague, its familiar tones mixing with nature's own music in a harmony that spoke of centuries of coexistence. "Even in the storm, we keep time," Thomas murmured, his eyes twinkling with satisfaction. "The city knows it can depend on us, rain or shine." As quickly as it had arrived, the storm began to move eastward. The thunder grew more distant, and the driving rain softened to a gentle shower. Wilhelm opened one of the shutters cautiously, and was greeted by the sight of Prague washed clean and gleaming in the returning sunlight. The cobblestones reflected the sky like mirrors, and the air smelled of fresh rain and blooming linden trees. They emerged onto the narrow walkway that circled the clock face, breathing in the sweet, rain-washed air. Below them, the city was coming back to life. People emerged from doorways and shops, children splashed in puddles, and the evening market vendors began to set up their stalls once again. Wilhelm checked the outer clock faces. Both the astronomical dial and the calendar dial were running perfectly, their hands marking time with the same precision as before the storm. Droplets of water clung to the brass fittings like tiny crystals, but the mechanisms themselves remained dry and protected within their stone housing. "Another storm weathered," Thomas said with quiet pride, patting the stone wall of their tower affectionately. "She's seen hundreds of springs, our clock tower, hundreds of storms like this one." As the sun broke through the departing clouds, painting the wet rooftops of Prague in gold and amber light, Wilhelm felt a deep sense of contentment. They had done their duty as guardians, protecting the ancient timepiece that kept the city's rhythm steady and true. The storm had passed, leaving behind clean air and the satisfied tick-tock of perfectly maintained clockwork. The bells chimed the half-hour, their bronze voices ringing clear across the peaceful city, marking time's passage as they had for generations, and would for generations yet to come. The morning of the Festival of Hours arrives with golden light streaming through the tall windows of the clock tower, casting dancing patterns across Wilhelm's weathered hands as he makes his final preparations. The great mechanism hums with its familiar rhythm, each gear and wheel turning in perfect harmony, as if the clock itself knows this day is special. From his perch high above the cobblestone square, Wilhelm can see the townspeople already beginning to gather, their colorful banners and festive garments creating a tapestry of celebration below. Thomas climbs the winding stone steps with careful reverence, his arms full of polished brass components they will use for today's demonstrations. The boy has grown so much this year, his movements now confident and sure as he navigates the narrow passages of the tower. "Master Wilhelm," he calls softly, "the people are singing in the square. I can hear them from the lower chamber." Indeed, the gentle melodies of traditional songs drift upward through the ancient stones, mixing with the steady tick-tock of the great pendulum to create a symphony of time and celebration. Wilhelm nods approvingly as he examines the mechanical figures one final time. The 12 apostles stand ready in their wooden alcoves, their painted faces serene and eternal. The skeletal figure of death holds his hourglass steady, while the Turkish figure adjusts his turban with mechanical precision. Each carved character has been lovingly maintained throughout the year, their intricate clockwork hearts beating in time with the master clock. Today, they will perform not just for the passage of hours, but for the wonder and delight of the festival crowd. The first visitors begin arriving as the sun reaches its mid-morning height. Families with wide-eyed children, elderly craftsmen who remember the clock's installation decades ago, and young couples holding hands as they climb the tower steps. Wilhelm greets each group with gentle warmth, his voice carrying the wisdom of countless hours spent in communion with time itself. "Welcome, welcome," he says, his words echoing softly in the circular chamber. "Come, see how we measure the precious moments of your lives." The children gather closest, their faces bright with curiosity as Wilhelm begins his explanation. His hands move slowly, deliberately, pointing to each component with the reverence of a priest showing sacred relics. "Here," he says, indicating the great weight that powers the entire mechanism, "here is the heart that never tires." It falls slowly, slowly, giving life to every wheel and spring throughout the tower. The children follow his finger as he traces the path of power through the brass gears, their eyes growing round with amazement. Thomas steps forward with a small demonstration clock, its mechanism visible through a crystal panel. The boy has learned his lessons well, speaking with quiet confidence about escapements and pendulums, his young voice adding music to Wilhelm's deeper tones. The crowd leans in closer, mothers lifting their smallest children for a better view, fathers nodding approvingly at the boy's knowledge. The festival has become not just a celebration of time, but a passing of wisdom from one generation to the next. As the hour approaches, Wilhelm raises his hand for silence. The crowd stills, even the youngest children sensing the magic about to unfold. The great clock prepares for its hourly performance, internal mechanisms shifting with whispered clicks and gentle thuds. Then, as the bronze bells begin their melodious chiming, the wooden doors burst open and the apostles begin their eternal procession. The children gasp with delight, pointing and laughing as each figure turns and bows in its ancient dance. The skeletal death nods his hourglass with solemn dignity, reminding all that time is precious and finite. Yet here, surrounded by the joy of the festival, his message feels not frightening but peaceful, a gentle reminder to cherish each moment. The Turkish figure wags his head in eternal disagreement, bringing smiles and chuckles from the crowd. Even the adults seem to become children again, watching with wonder as the mechanical theater unfolds above their heads. Throughout the afternoon, group after group climbs the tower stairs. Wilhelm never tires of sharing his knowledge, each explanation given with the same patience and love as the first. The clockwork continues its faithful service, marking the festival hours with bronze voices that ring across the medieval city. Thomas assists with unwavering dedication, carefully demonstrating the smaller mechanisms, answering questions with the careful precision his master has taught him. As evening approaches and the last visitors make their way down the stone steps, Wilhelm stands alone with the great clock, listening to its eternal song. The festival continues in the square below, but here in the tower, time maintains its steady rhythm. The mechanical figures rest in their alcoves, ready to dance again when the next hour calls. The festival of hours draws to its close, but the celebration of time itself continues, moment by precious moment, in the faithful heart of the ancient tower. The golden light of late afternoon filters through the tall windows of the clock tower's upper chamber, casting long amber rays across the familiar landscape of gears and wheels that have been Wilhelm's companions for more than 30 years. The ancient mechanisms breathe quietly around him, their bronze surfaces warmed by the autumn sun, each cogwheel and pendulum a testament to countless hours of careful tending and devoted craftsmanship. Wilhelm settles into his well-worn wooden chair, the same seat where he has spent thousands of afternoons just like this one. His weathered hands rest gently on his knees as he surveys the mechanical symphony that surrounds him. The great master wheel turns with its eternal patience, each revolution marking another moment in Prague's endless story. The soft clicking of escapements creates a rhythmic lullaby that has soothed his spirit through decades of service. From somewhere below, the gentle sound of Thomas's footsteps echoes up the stone stairs. The young man moves with growing confidence now, his touch becoming ever more certain as he learns the delicate art of clockwork. Wilhelm smiles softly, remembering his own tentative first months in this sacred space, when every adjustment felt monumental and every tick seemed precious beyond measure. The afternoon light shifts slowly across the bronze faces of the clock's internal workings, highlighting the smooth wear patterns where Wilhelm's fingers have traced familiar paths year after year. He reaches out now, his palm resting against the warm metal of the main drive wheel. Through his fingertips, he can feel the steady pulse of mechanical time, the heartbeat of hours and minutes flowing like an endless river through the copper channels and steel pathways of his beloved creation. Thomas appears at the top of the stairs, carrying a small leather pouch of freshly polished springs. His movements are quiet and respectful in this contemplative hour, understanding without words that these twilight moments belong to reflection and peaceful communion with the ancient mechanisms. He settles at the workbench nearby, beginning the methodical process of winding the smaller regulatory springs, his technique now smooth and practiced. The sound of the boy's work blends seamlessly with the tower's eternal chorus. Wilhelm closes his eyes and listens to the layered symphony of time itself, the deep, resonant tick of the master pendulum, the gentle whir of gear trains, the soft whisper of weights descending through their channels. Each sound tells a story of precision and patience, of countless adjustments made with love and reverence for the craft. He thinks of all the seasons that have passed within these stone walls. Winter mornings when frost painted delicate patterns on the windows, and the mechanisms moved with crystalline precision in the cold air. Spring afternoons when the scent of apple blossoms drifted up from the gardens below, carried on warm breezes that stirred the tower's ancient dust. Summer days when the bronze grew almost too hot to touch, and the steady tick-tick-tick provided cooling rhythm in the drowsy heat. And now autumn, with its golden light and gentle melancholy, its promise of rest and renewal. Wilhelm opens his eyes to watch Thomas work, seeing in the young man's careful movements the continuation of something larger than any single lifetime. The knowledge flows like water from teacher to student, the ancient wisdom of wheels and springs and precisely balanced weights passing from one generation to the next. The bells in the chamber above prepare for their evening song, and Wilhelm can sense their readiness through the subtle vibrations that travel down the tower's stone spine. Soon they will ring out across Prague's rooftops, calling the city to pause and remember the passage of sacred time. But for now, in these quiet minutes before the hour strikes, there is only peace and the gentle communion of craftsmen with their beloved work. The great clock ticks onward, steady and sure, carrying Prague forward into another evening, another night, another dawn. Wilhelm rests his hand once more upon the warm bronze of the master wheel, feeling through his palm the endless circulation of moments, each one precious, each one part of the grand design that connects all things in time's eternal flow. In this golden afternoon light, surrounded by the patient mechanisms that have been his life's work, Wilhelm finds a deep contentment. The tower breathes quietly around them, keeper of hours and guardian of time, while master and apprentice continue their peaceful vigil in the fading day. The September air carries a different quality now, cooler and touched with the faint scent of wood smoke from distant chimneys. Wilhelm runs his weathered fingers along the bronze gears of the astronomical mechanism, feeling the subtle shift that tells him autumn is stirring in the world below. Through the tall windows of the clock tower, golden leaves drift past like tiny messengers, each one whispering of the season's slow transformation. "Come here, Thomas," Wilhelm calls softly to his young apprentice, who is carefully oiling the smaller gears near the pendulum. "There is something you must see." The boy sets down his cloth and approaches the great astronomical dial, its intricate face gleaming in the amber light of late afternoon. The brass sun pointer has been moving gradually southward over the past weeks, and Wilhelm traces its path with his finger, explaining the ancient dance of time and seasons that their clock captures so perfectly. "See how the sun's path grows shorter each day?" Wilhelm's voice is gentle, patient. "Our clock doesn't merely count the hours, my boy. It tells the story of the turning year itself." Thomas watches with wide eyes as Wilhelm adjusts the seasonal mechanism, a complex arrangement of wheels and cogs that accounts for the changing length of daylight. The clockmaker's movements are deliberate and reverent, as if he were conducting a sacred ritual. Each tiny adjustment ensures that their timepiece remains in harmony with the natural world spinning around them. Outside, the rooftops of Prague stretch into the distance, their red tiles now scattered with the first fallen leaves of autumn. The Vltava River winds through the city below, its waters reflecting the deeper blue of the September sky. From their high perch in the tower, the two clock keepers can see merchants closing their stalls as evening approaches, and mothers calling children inside for supper. "The ancients understood something we sometimes forget," Wilhelm continues, his hands still working among the brass mechanisms. "Time is not just a sequence of moments ticking away. It is a great wheel, always turning, always returning. Summer flows into autumn, autumn surrenders to winter, and winter always, always gives way to spring again." The boy nods thoughtfully, beginning to understand why his master speaks of their work with such reverence. This is not merely mechanical labor, but a sacred keeping of time itself. As Wilhelm completes his adjustments, the clock chimes the hour with its deep, resonant voice. The sound echoes across the city, marking another moment in the endless cycle of days and seasons. In workshops and homes below, people pause in their evening tasks to listen to the familiar bronze voice of their guardian timekeeper. "There," Wilhelm says with satisfaction, stepping back from the mechanism. "Now our clock will mark the autumn hours correctly, accounting for the sun's changing arc across the sky." The two men stand quietly for a moment, watching the great wheels turn in their eternal rhythm. The clockwork moves with hypnotic precision, each gear finding its perfect place in the larger dance of time. The sound is soothing, a gentle clicking and whirring that speaks of order and continuity. Through the western window, the sun hangs lower now, painting everything in warm golden light. The first stars are beginning to appear in the darkening sky, and Wilhelm points out how their astronomical dial tracks these celestial companions as well. The clock is truly a mirror of the heavens, reflecting the great cosmic dance that governs all earthly seasons. "Will you remember this moment, Thomas?" Wilhelm asks softly. "Years from now, when you tend these mechanisms yourself, will you remember how the autumn light looked on the brass wheels, and how the leaves fell past our windows like time itself made visible?" The apprentice promises that he will, and Wilhelm smiles. This is how the sacred knowledge passes from one keeper to the next, not just the technical skills, but the deeper understanding of what it means to be a guardian of time's passage. As the evening deepens and the city settles into night, the two clock keepers complete their daily tasks with quiet satisfaction. Tomorrow will bring new adjustments, new observations of the seasonal changes. But tonight, they have ensured that their great clock will continue its faithful marking of time's eternal wheel, turning always from season to season, year into year, in the endless rhythm that connects all living things. The bells chime once more as full darkness claims the city, their bronze voices carrying across Prague like a blessing, marking another day's passage in the great turning wheel of time. The golden light of late afternoon filters through the narrow windows of the clock tower, casting long amber shadows across the worn wooden floorboards. Wilhelm runs his weathered fingers along the smooth brass of the great timepiece, feeling the gentle vibration of gears turning in their eternal dance. Each tick resonates through his bones like a heartbeat, steady and reassuring. "Listen to her sing, Thomas," he murmurs to his young apprentice, who stands beside him polishing the smaller mechanisms with careful strokes. The boy has learned well this past year, his movements now flowing with the same patient rhythm that has guided Wilhelm for decades. Together, they tend to the intricate clockwork as the sun begins its descent toward the terracotta rooftops of Prague. The city spreads below them like a tapestry woven from stone and timber. Smoke curls lazily from countless chimneys, carrying the warm scents of evening meals, roasted meat, fresh bread, herbs from kitchen gardens tucked between ancient walls. The Vltava River catches the dying light, its surface shimmering like hammered silver as it winds through the heart of their beloved city. Wilhelm adjusts a small spring with practiced precision, feeling the mechanism settle into perfect alignment. The clock face glows in the amber light, its hands moving with the same measured grace they have maintained for countless seasons. He remembers when these very gears were first fitted, how his own master had shown him the delicate balance required to keep time flowing smoothly. "See how the pendulum finds its rhythm?" Wilhelm asks, his voice soft as velvet in the tower's intimate space. Thomas nods, his young face earnest with concentration. The great weight swings back and forth with hypnotic regularity, each arc marking another moment in the endless river of time that flows through their lives. Below them, the cathedral bells of St. Vitus begin their evening song, deep bronze voices calling across the cobblestones. Wilhelm smiles, knowing that in moments their own bells will join the chorus. He reaches for the familiar rope, worn smooth by generations of clock keepers before him. The hemp feels warm and alive in his palms. The first chime resonates through the tower walls, a pure note that seems to hang in the air like incense. One by one, the bells add their voices, high silver tones dancing with deep copper bass, creating harmonies that seem to touch the very soul of Prague. Wilhelm closes his eyes and lets the sound wash over him, feeling the vibrations travel through stone and timber, through his body, connecting him to every living thing in the city below. Thomas sets down his polishing cloth and moves to the window, watching as lamplighters begin their evening rounds. Tiny flames bloom one by one along the winding streets, like earthbound stars marking paths through the gathering dusk. The boy's reflection mingles with the view, his face peaceful and content. "Another day well spent," Wilhelm says, running his hand along the main drive shaft one final time. The metal hums with quiet energy, perfectly calibrated, every component working in seamless harmony. Tomorrow there will be small adjustments to make, weights to wind, surfaces to clean, the gentle, eternal work of keeping time itself flowing smoothly. The clock keeper moves to his leather-bound ledger, making careful notations with a quill pen. Temperature, humidity, the precise timing of each hour's chimes, all recorded with the same meticulous care his predecessors maintained for centuries. The pages whisper softly as he turns them, filled with generations of careful observations, a chronicle of time itself. As the last light fades from the western sky, Wilhelm and Thomas gather their tools with quiet efficiency. The clock tower settles into its evening rhythm, mechanisms humming their lullaby to the sleeping city. Every gear tooth meshes perfectly, every spring maintains its tension, every weight hangs in precise balance. They descend the winding stone stairs together, their footsteps echoing softly in the narrow passage. At each landing, Wilhelm pauses to check a smaller timepiece, ensuring that every clock in the tower maintains perfect synchronization. The building breathes around them, old stones expanding and contracting with the cooling air, whispering stories of all the years they have witnessed. Outside, Prague settles into peaceful slumber. Window shutters close one by one, candlelight flickers behind oiled parchment, and the city's heartbeat slows to match the eternal rhythm of the clock tower bells. Wilhelm locks the heavy oak door and pockets the ancient key, knowing that tomorrow will bring another day of tending time's endless, comforting flow. The bells chime one final time as they walk away, marking not an ending but a gentle pause in the eternal symphony that connects yesterday to tomorrow, binding all of Prague in time's tender embrace.